My maternal grandmother's birthday was on Thursday, and she would have been 102. So I initiated a group text with her kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. And so throughout the day, some photos were shared in that group text. It's so helpful to have technology for so many reasons. And the pictures that came throughout the day were of different stages and ages of my grandmother's life. When she was young, when she was a parent, when she was a great-grandmother, when she was at the pool with her bathing cap on in her backyard, when she was cooking, when she was laughing, when she was in the hospital. All kinds of photos came through, and it was that feeling like you're at a funeral, a visitation, and you see the photo boards or you watch the video, and it's like the person's whole life is happening at the same time. And so you get a sense maybe of how God sees things, not in the linear ways that we do, but the whole of our lives and our relationships at one time. So this season of Lent, we have been traveling with Jesus and going different places with him and thinking about the places that we have been, about the places we are now, and about the places that we are going. And today we're thinking about Jesus at someone else's house. He is sharing with us intimate time that he had with a particular sibling group in Bethany, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Jesus spends significant moments with them, as you know from the scriptural stories, and in those stories, we can learn about him, and we can learn about them, and we can learn about ourselves. And so I want to say, as we move into this story time, James is going to share 3 different stories of Jesus with that sibling group. He enters in when there are disputes in the family. He's entered in when there is death in the family. And he enters in when there's dedication and a moment of pure, deep connection. All 3 stories in my mind happen simultaneously. And as we read these stories, you'll hear that they refer sometimes to the other stories and to the connection that the siblings had. And that God is with this family the whole time, regardless of what they are in the middle of, whether there are those disputes or times of death or times of dedication. And so we are encouraged to listen to people's stories, to understand their relationships that are struggles and their relationships that are celebrations. To ourselves be a non-anxious presence like Jesus is, to weep with people, to be kind and generous, to find ways to honor them and to travel our own unique road that sometimes aligns with other people's travels. So we have 4 children. Each of them has had a very different experience growing up in our house and being a young adult. And so I'm just going to ask you, since we're talking about sibling groups, to pray for our 19-year-old Dexter, because the other 3, when they were 19, lived somewhere else. They lived on their own away at college, and Dexter, poor boy, lives at home as a commuter, and so he's having a very different experience than his siblings have had. And so each of us can find ways to connect with the stories of others as we visit one another's houses, as we learn each other's stories, just like Lazarus and Martha and Mary. Now I'm putting them alphabetically, right? Because, sometimes people get upset, siblings, when they're not alphabetical or birth order or height or some other distinction.
This reading is from Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her."
Day-to-day disputes in relationships happen. Some of you might be living in a moment of disputes with the people that you live with or with your relatives or in your circle of friends. And so we're told at the beginning of this story that Jesus goes to this certain village. And I like that idea of certain village because it's specific. It has a context and a time and a place, an individual family system and individuals within those family systems. And we're not sure how Jesus made this connection the first time. Maybe he had it with a lot of other families too, and we just don't have that story. But it's about hospitality, this story. Martha is engaged in many tasks, while Mary, her sister, sits at his feet. And we have no idea in this story where Lazarus is. Martha becomes annoyed and frustrated, and she says to Jesus in an effort to rat out her sister, "Don't you care that she's doing nothing? That lazy blah, blah, blah." I'm thinking that Jesus wasn't worried about the food that Martha was worried about. This Jesus could turn water into wine. He could multiply loaves of bread and fish. He was able to do incredible things when people were hungry and thirsty. And so probably he was moving toward Mary because she was letting those details go. She wasn't distracted by her many tasks. Instead, she was of one mind, centered at his feet, had blinders on maybe, because Martha probably was giving her a stink eye or finding another way to try to get her to do some of her tasks. But Mary was available to that moment, to the holy who was visiting her house and wanted that interaction and wanted to let all the other things go. There are other places in Scripture where Jesus invites us to let things go, not to be overwhelmed by tasks that can distract us, by relationships that can tear us down, by a past that haunts us, or by worries about the future. And it's almost as if Jesus is coming into this home to say, find balance. There are tasks that you need to do, but there's also time that you need to spend away from those tasks, listening to the holy, finding a way to let all of the other things go for a time so that you can decide how to bring balance to your life, how to be focused on the tasks and how to be focused on the receiving and the blessings.
The next reading is from John chapter 11, selected verses. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." Jesus told the disciples, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right." Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And then when Mary heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again, greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said, "God, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go."
I like to imagine Psalm 126 that James read at the beginning of the service coming alive in these moments for Mary and Martha and Lazarus because he came out of the tomb. Psalm 126 says, "May those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying their sheaves." Death comes to every house, and we have known too much grief here already this year. And so we can appreciate that Jesus enters into this intimate moment in the house of Mary and Martha and Lazarus because of the death. And we see that Mary and Martha are receiving great care and love because all of the people are there to console them in their loss. And surely they don't have photos to look at from their phones, but they're telling stories to each other, and they're remembering the uniqueness of Lazarus, the things that they all did together, the things that were left done and undone, the challenges that they faced, the opportunities that they took together. They were reconnecting, remembering, bringing all that fabric together, making the story, making connections, belonging to each other. And then Martha realizes that Jesus isn't there. They had asked for him to come. And so because Martha is Martha, she's on the road trying to find him and probably to pull him back to her house. So she's like the prodigal parent meeting the one on the road who was expected to be there at home. And she says to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And then they have this interesting conversation about faith and resurrection, supporting each other, and they feel the intensity of the moment. And then Martha leaves Jesus, goes to get Mary. She's a little bit of a boss, right? She goes to get Mary and tells her to come to meet Jesus on the road. And when Mary goes, she's consistent. She kneels at his feet. You remember she was the one in the house in the earlier story where Martha was distracted and moving, and Mary came to Jesus and knelt down at his feet again. But she says the same thing that her sister said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And everyone is weeping, and Jesus weeps. Jesus wept. In some languages, in some translations, that's the shortest verse of the Bible, which tells us a great deal, that Jesus enters in, that Jesus is with us, that Jesus is human, and that when someone dies, he cries, because that's one of the things that love does. It weeps. It finds a way out. And so Jesus is entering into that grief, where the people, Mary and Martha and others, because death comes to every home, were surely feeling like Lazarus was physically, bound and removed and trapped and powerless, and that grief was overwhelming to them, and Jesus felt it, and he was greatly disturbed. And then he prays out loud. Again, the first story, Jesus could have created food, created water and wine, could have set them aside, but what he decided to do was to pray out loud, maybe modeling for the people, maybe inviting them to pray with him, maybe so that he could find clarity. When he prayed out loud, maybe he was able to hear things that he wasn't sure that he could name inside. Maybe he was praying out loud so that others could listen, so that others could learn, so that others could love him, so that they could meet him where he was. It's all about being with. Jesus going to their home, Jesus entering into this weeping, Jesus entering into this grief. Every moment of our lives, Jesus enters in. The holy doesn't leave us alone. The holy is with us.
This last reading is from John chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me."
Again, we wonder where Lazarus is in this story. Maybe because he saw Jesus doing those good things before, maybe Lazarus is with grieving people, sitting with them, crying with them, expressing the same solidarity that he knew made a great difference to his sisters when he had died. And we're not sure where Martha is, maybe working in the kitchen, maybe running errands, surely involved in her tasks. Would have been interesting if this story had Martha, the one who anointed Jesus' feet, but sometimes people stay in their roles, sometimes people stay in their style. But in addition to the disputes and to the death that Jesus enters into in the house of Mary and Martha and Lazarus, Jesus enters here in this moment where Mary commits and dedicates herself. She's not just dedicating herself to Jesus as if that's an end in and of itself. She is anointing Jesus' feet because she's committing herself to walk the ways that he walked, to say the things that he said, to be engaged with people on a deeper level. And so Mary is committing to be Jesus, to be more Christ-like in the world, because she wants to honor him and she wants to soak in his power and his spirit, his words and his ways, and she wants to dedicate herself to the people around, to the people that she knows, and she wants surely to stretch herself, to go, to travel like Jesus did. And all of this is about being with and being in relationship. These stories, in my mind, happen simultaneously as Mary and Martha and Lazarus figure out how to love each other, figure out how to dispute with each other, figure out how to mourn, how to move forward, how to expect miracles, how to be a part of solidarity and sweetness with each other. And so we are about to come to the communion table so that we too can receive more of Jesus' presence, so that we can be empowered by him, so that we are more able to say the things that he said and do the things that he did, so that we can enter into each other's lives when there are disputes, when there is death, when there's an opportunity to be dedicated and committed to each other, to walk with each other, to listen to each other, to learn each other's stories, to be with each other. Please pray with us. God, we thank you for this tiny glimpse into the family of Martha and Mary and Lazarus, and for the ways that you met them where they were, for the ways that you were a guest in their home and you were honored and you brought gifts of listening, gifts of encouragement, gift of a mirror to hold up to them so that they could see their priorities and see their power and see possibilities. We thank you, O God, that you are always with us, eager to receive us, eager to help us find wisdom and clarity, helping us to find our power and our gifts to be with each other. God, you created us in relationship. You created us not to be self-sufficient, but to belong to each other. And so send us to each other's places, to each other's houses as guests, and help us to bring you with us in word and in action, that we might weave together the kind of community that we need, the kind of community that you dream of, the kind of community that is possible when we receive and use your gifts, your spiritual gifts that you give to each of us. As we approach this table, help us to be vulnerable. Help us to be available and expectant, because you are with us at this table. Amen.